My vote means equality. Mi voto significa igualdad.
My vote is courage.
My vote means human rights belong to everyone.
My vote is important because it gives me a voice.
My vote means access to housing for all people, but especially queer and trans people and people living with HIV.
My vote means having a seat at the table. It counts as a vote for me and my community.
My vote means I participated in the democratic process with a candidate I believed in.
My vote is my weapon. It is one of many powerful tools in my arsenal, and it will continue to fight against racism, white supremacy, oppression, and the ignorant.
My vote means courage to stand in line to go vote, to create change.
My vote means accountability.
My vote is resilience.
Using my vote will count for everybody else who is disadvantaged and may not have the opportunity or the will to vote.
My vote is power.
My vote means that I am ensuring my voice, my wants, and my needs are being heard and counted.
Please be safe and vote for as soon as we can, because we need a change and we need equality, because every human deserves to be equal. So, por favor, vota por el cambio y por la igualdad. Gracias.
My vote is important to me because it gives me the opportunity to use my voice and my rights to fight for things that we have not been able to fight for the last 30, 40, 50 years.
My vote means to me that I'm able to succeed and get my dream.
My vote is everything. My vote means that I continue to be free and have a voice amongst a world where I have none.
Hey now. My name is Ashlee Marie Preston, and I am the 2020 ambassador for the National Transgender Visibility March, and I'm also founder of You Are Essential, and I'm joined by, joined with Alphonso David, president of the Human Rights Campaign. And this is exciting because we've had quite a journey with this series of the My Voice is My Vote conversations that we've had, and there's been so much information shared. For those of you who are just catching up to us, you're in for a treat. I know many of us are seeing so much information on the internet, but we want to consider the source because it's always he, she, they said, and we're gonna make sure that y'all are armed with facts today. We're also coming off of the heels of an amazing march. For those of you who were able to join, we saw Hope Giselle turning it up inside out in different cities all across the U.S., having conversations with folks just like yourself who are excited about this opportunity to be a part of the change. We understand that if we do what we always did, we're going to get what we always got. And so we're doing something different in 2020. We're stepping forward, and we're going to make sure that we take advantage of the power that we have to shift the social ecology. With that being said, we want you to be a part of this conversation too at home. So make sure that you send us any questions, give us some feedback. We want y'all to help get us hyped up today because this is a momentous occasion. And without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Alphonso.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Ashlee. You are correct. There is a lot of excitement for this election and everything is on the line. So we cannot sit on the sidelines. Ashlee, the last time I saw you was at the Transgender March.
Yeah.
And the energy there was just electric. There were so many people out. There were so many people participating, and people were just engaging in the march, but also interested in how they can invest in our future. And when I say our future, I mean all of our future, the future of the movement, LGBTQ issues, the future of this country.
Mm-hmm.
And at the march, sorry, say that again.
Oh, no, I was going to say, speaking of the country, over 34 million folks have already voted. 34 million, just to let y'all know this ain't a game.
Yes, yes. And, you know, the LGBTQ community has faced challenges over the past 4 years, and the trans community specifically has been confronted with assault after assault after assault from the Trump-Pence administration. And also, unfortunately, we're seeing really high rates of violence against the trans community. At the Human Rights Campaign, we launched an initiative called the Transgender Justice Initiative. It's a multi-pronged approach that looks at employment, capacity building, unfortunately, the violence that the trans community is facing, as well as public education to make sure that we turn the tide. And I'm so pleased tonight that we're going to have another party joining us, and that is Ms. Tori Cooper, who is running the Transgender Justice Initiative for the Human Rights Campaign, an accomplished advocate, a huge fan of house music. I just learned today I am as well, and is really helping us to make sure we get out the vote. Tori, thank you so much for joining us.
So thank you so much. Thank you, Alphonso. Certainly, thank you so much, Ashlee Marie. I am very, very excited to be here tonight, and I'm hype. And yes, I love house music. I wish that there were a house song talking about voting. So should I talk a little bit about my experience as a voter?
That'll be great. That'll be great.
So I'm probably the eldest statesperson on the call tonight. I'm 50 years old, and I voted every year in every single election cycle except one midterm election since 1988. And I am extremely proud of that. It's something I've just done for years. It's something my mom, my dad, my whole family does. We make a real family event out of it. But at the same time, I understand that there are a lot of folks who are really scared about voting, who are scared about, we're in the middle of a COVID pandemic, and I understand there are folks who are scared about their ballots being lost in the mail. Don't worry about that. Folks who are terrified, take precautions. You don't need to be afraid. You don't need to be scared. I've never had a problem voting, whether absentee or in person. But I will say that one of your action items today has got to be figure out how and where you will vote. We're 2 weeks away from the election. We're now at 7:10 p.m. on the East Coast. If you aren't already in line, then it would be a little too late for you to go and vote in most places. However, you have to have a plan. So we can take the where out. You need to know where it is that you're going to vote. I tell this story often. My mom, she's really my biggest fan. She's an election worker in Richmond, Virginia, because I grew up just outside of Richmond. And she's the one that told me that at any time, we talked to her when we were talking about putting together all of this information around Get Out the Vote and our partnership at HRC with the National Transgender Visibility March. And she told me that at any time, people in her area, if they're having a problem voting, if their name isn't on the registry, whatever the case is, that they can ask for a precinct captain or registrar. Now, the person's title, their name, they might be a little different wherever you vote, but their job is going to be the same. That person's job is to verify your identity, even when your documents don't match. And for those of us who are trans, perhaps gender nonconforming or non-binary folks, the picture or the name may not match the person who's standing there. So you do not have to stand there and be embarrassed when someone just doesn't get it, when they don't get it. So ultimately, everybody that's in that precinct, they're really there working for you to make sure and to help you vote. Remember that. And always remember, election workers, they're real people. They have real families. And a lot of them have trans family members as well. How was that, Alphonso? Does that sound like a good way to get the conversation started today?
Just heard from Tori, and I'm going to ask all of you a very simple question. Do you have your ballot? If you do, please vote now. And how do you do that? You drop off your ballot at the drop box. There should be drop boxes in your state. In some cases, I know it's more complicated than others, but if you have your ballot, please vote now. Drop it off at your drop box. We need to make sure that your votes are counted. And the only way that your votes are going to be counted is if you drop off your ballots, if you're going to be voting using your ballot. We're coming very, very close to Election Day, and we want to make sure that you drop off your ballot so that they can be counted in this year's election.
And if you don't have your ballot, I'm going to let y'all in on a little secret, a little trick that I use. There's this website called ballottracks.net. And if you put your state in, so I put california.ballottracks.net, and it not only showed me how far out I was from receiving my ballot, it let me know when it got to the post office, when it got dropped off, and I've already voted early via mail. And just today, I was talking to one of my friends trying to figure out if they've actually counted the vote yet. So I have it set up for a text message alert so that when they've actually received my vote and they count it, I'll be alerted. So for those of you who are interested in tracking it that way, you can visit ballottracks.net and then choose the state that you're in, and let's get it. But also, if you don't have your ballot, you can also show up and plan to vote early on November 3rd. It's gonna be wild. It's gonna be wild. Like, I see folks that are out there planning like they're at the tailgate at the baseball or football game. So if you're somebody, you know, I'm not judging you. Like, ideally, we would like for you to vote early, but if you can't vote early, we get it. Life happens. Make sure that you prepare to bring a lunch. For those who may have disabilities, make sure that you bring a chair. If you got an extra voting chair, bring one for somebody else. The lines are going to be ridiculous. Like, let's just be real. But again, it can't be any more ridiculous than these last 4 years. So with that being said, make sure you do that.
So I wonder, have the two of you talked to your family and friends about voting yet?
Yes, God.
All the time. All the time.
So I told you who I didn't tell you my mom's name. They don't need to do that. But I told you what my mom does. And so my family, we talk about voting. I wonder if folks who are checking us out tonight, if they've talked to their family and friends, if they've made a plan. Because if not, I encourage you, I admonish you, make a plan. Join together, ride together, do whatever's necessary so that you, if there's early voting is still available in your area, so that you can vote early together, or that you can vote on November the 3rd together. That's really important.
And this is a good time, especially with your parents. This is a good time to be in their business. My mama was in my business for my entire life. So get in their business. Like, ask them, you know, are you voting? Like, who are you going with? Like, what's, you know, that's so important. And I want to also say, for those of you who have a family of choice, family is family, boo. Make sure that y'all have a plan to go together for social support, because we know sometimes as trans and non-binary folks, it jumps off sometimes, you know what I mean? Or we feel uncomfortable or unsafe. So make it safe for somebody else and volunteer to go with them. Even if you already voted early, show up for somebody.
And sort of just piggybacking on what Ashlee just said, because I come from a very large family, West African family. And when we say family, I mean cousins, second cousins, third cousins, fourth cousins. Talk to them about voting. This is the most important election of our lives. And there may be people who have not received that phone call. No one has talked to them about the election. They may not fully appreciate how the current policies directly affect your life and how it has detrimentally affected your life. So please engage with your family and your friends all over the country to make sure that they engage. Now, I know that a lot of folks are already voting, and we've really heard some incredible stories. Tori just talked to us about her experience with her mom. We've heard some really incredible stories around the country about folks who are voting maybe for the first time and how they're casting their ballots. And it is incredibly important and so meaningful for people when they're voting for the first time. And you know, there's stories all across the country, and I think we may have one tonight.
I'm excited, really, when I hear these stories, because this isn't about judgment. We're not interested in what you did yesterday, yesteryear, whenever. It's about what you're willing to do today, in the moment, in the right now. And I think the most beautiful thing about this moment in history is that we've seen voter turnout in an unprecedented way. And I think that, again, like, it doesn't matter how old you are, whether you're young, whether you're older, it's about taking action today. So I'm excited about this next person coming up, because this is like my sister from another mister. And I know many of you probably already know her. I know Tori does, for sure.
So I am thrilled, I'm happy, I'm excited and honored to welcome everybody. My sister, you all know her. So she's the founder of the Trans Visibility March, and she's gonna share just a little bit with us now. Marissa?
I guess I should probably unmute. Hey, everybody, how's everybody doing? So listen, I am so excited to have the opportunity to share about being a first-time voter. I was like really, really scared. And as Tori said, I got a plan together. One of my best friends, her name is Sandra. I asked her, could I say her name? And she said, absolutely. I called Sandra and I said, Sandra, listen, I've never voted before. She said, are you kidding me? And I said, no. And it was something that I was ashamed of. You know, a lot of people know my history. You know, I spent a lot of time in the Department of Corrections. And so I never thought that I could vote, you know. And I think that I really didn't realize until this election how important it was that I actually voted. And so I got registered. I just transferred from Washington, D.C. to Indiana. So I got registered in Washington, D.C. And I was a little worried. I said, well, when I put my zip code in this little link that comes up, it's telling me that I'm not registered. So I said, well, I'm not going to worry about it. And that's the same thing that I have been saying for the last 10 years, not going to worry about it. But this time I said, I'm going to worry about it. So I had went down to the Indianapolis Urban League and they were enrolling people for voting registration. So I got registered, got the little card in the mail that said I was registered. And so on the first day of early voter registration in Indianapolis, me and my best friend of 30 years went down to the city county building. We were probably in line for about 6 hours. And there were several times I said to her, well, listen, we can come back another day. And she said, no, girl, we're standing in line. And so we stood in line. I got inside of the facility and I whispered to the lady because I didn't even know how to operate the machines and was a little embarrassed. Having worked in public health for the last 15 years, why wasn't I registered to vote? Why didn't I know how to do this process? But it was a nice Black lady that was inside of the thing. And I whispered to her, I said I was a first-time voter. And lo and behold, she rung this bell and everybody in the place started clapping for me being a first-time voter. And I'll never forget the most amazing thing that happened is when I walked outside of the facility, the Omega Sci-Fi is a very masculine, sometimes toxic masculine fraternity, was there to hug me and shake my hand and tell me thank you for voting. And so that was my experience. And I was really, really, really grateful for my best friend taking that journey with me. And so if there's anybody out there that is like me, anybody that has doubts if they can vote, please look at our website. Go on the HRC website. There are details if you can vote. You can call me, you can call Tori, you can call Ashlee, you can call any of us to make sure that you can vote. And as Tori said, get a plan together to go vote. And like Ashlee said, it is like tailgating because when we was out there, people had chairs, the Omega Sci-Fis were passing out water, we had chips. And so I'm just grateful that this year my vote does count. And so I'm so excited about that.
Thank you, Marissa. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that story. That's really powerful. And it speaks to just how important, folks. I am so glad that they honored you. Thank you for your transparency. You see how folks are all in this together. Voting is an experience. We're going to switch over to questions, but I'd like to take like 2 sentences to tell you all about my grandmother. So my mom was here. How incredible my mom is, right? So she said, well, we're going to go on Amazon. Let's go and buy these chairs for her mom, my grandma, and my grandmother's brother. She said, because they'll want chairs. They'll need chairs because the lines are long. So we went on Amazon and I said, well, let me call my grandmother. And I said, so would you like a chair for voting? She said, baby, I already did it. And that was 2 weeks ago. So we know this is important. If my grandmother, who's well in her 80s, and her brother, who's right behind her, they know the importance of it. We've got to do this. So thank you again for sharing it, Marissa. Whether you're a first-time voter like Marissa, whether you're someone who's been doing it for decades, like my grandmother and my great uncle, do it. So let's transition to questions. Thank you, Marissa, for your work with the Trans Visibility March. You've done so much for our community, and I appreciate all that you're doing now. So let's take a couple of audience questions. How about that?
Well, really quick. I just want to also understand that some of us are able to take trains and buses to get to where we need to go. But for folks like me, especially, I've never driven a day in my life. So make sure that you take advantage of the partnership between Lyft and the National Trans Visibility March and HRC. So if you use, I think there's a code. Let me find the code, because you know we love a discount, hunty. I know that there's a 50% off promo that they're having. But if you go to www.lyft.com/vote, they'll hook you up. So make sure there's no excuses. We want to see you, whether it's bus, train, taking a Lyft, hopping a ride with a friend. There are options out there. So make sure you take advantage of that Lyft code.
And let me just sort of, in certain parts of the country, there are forces that make it more complicated and more difficult for us to vote. And so in a certain state, you may have to drive for longer than you should have to in order to vote, in order to cast your ballot. That's why what Ashlee is saying is so important. Yes, there are forces that are against us, against LGBTQ people, against progressive movements in order for us to get our votes counted. So there are resources like the Lyft partnership. Please make sure you utilize those. Please make sure you reach out to friends and family members that are facing challenges where they're saying, I don't know that I can get to the polling station. Make sure that they know these resources exist, because we need to make sure every vote is counted.
Mm-hmm. I was going to go ahead and cut to the questions, but somebody already jumped in with one. So for those of you who have questions, go ahead and leave those for us in the chat. But the first question we got is, let me lean in, because, I'm getting kind of, I got to lean in. So what if the gender marker and/or picture on my ID is different than my current presentation? Oh, no, T. So basically, if there is a discrepancy with your name and your gender marker, that should not be a deterrent from you voting. If they try to make an issue about your gender presentation, expression, or name, you can request to speak to a registrar after first asking to speak to a lead person on site. But that should not be a problem. You don't have to look like your picture. Honey, let me tell you something. Lean all the way in. Quarantine has been delicious. I got that good old gastric bypass photo on my ID. And as we can see, she's healthy, alive, and well. So that being said, I don't look like my ID, despite whatever my name says. I look nothing like my ID. So with that being said,
Ashlee, you should stop.
With that being said, make sure that you take advantage of this and understand that you deserve respect and for your identity to be honored. And it's not their job to determine who you are or how you identify or what's valid. You're valid. Just make sure that you do not leave that site without voting. And if they do make an issue about it, then please make sure you ask to speak to someone who can remove the obstacle for you.
And if I can add to that very briefly, in many locations, and perhaps in all, you'll actually have the registrar's number on the outside, so that it's visible before you go inside, and then it should be posted again inside. Never, again, do not leave without voting at any time. You can ask for the registrar, and that is their responsibility to make sure that they get you connected and they can verify your identity on site.
But guess how we can remedy that? Vote early. Vote early. And for those of you who aren't sure if it's too late for you to still be considered voting early, make sure you go to www.hrc.org/vote, and you'll be able to enter your state and figure out if it's too late and when your deadline is based on your state, because it's still some time. I know we're down to the wire, but please don't play yourself and don't play us, because we need to make sure that we show up and that we take advantage of this opportunity. So make sure to check out that tool at HRC to see if it's still possible for you to vote by mail.
And we have another question that just came in, also related to being potentially late. Question is, I'm not sure I'm registered. Is it too late? Well, at this point in the election, you're still able to request, a mail-in ballot in many states, but it is cutting it very close. We have 14 days before the election. It's a very personal decision, of course, whether or not you're going to vote by mail or vote in person because of COVID-19. If you're able to, I would encourage you to vote early, in person or on election day. It's better to make sure that your vote is counted. As Ashlee said, go to hrc.org/vote. Go there now. You can go there now. You can go there after this is over. Look up your options and make sure you plan today. So much about voting is dependent on where you live, which state you live in. 21 states, including the District of Columbia, allow same-day registration. So the same day you register, you could vote potentially in those 21 states. Please make sure that you check hrc.org/vote to make sure you understand what the rules are in your state. You can also go to www.vote.org. It's another great resource to know when is the last day to register in your area. Please look that up tonight, not tomorrow, not this weekend, but look it up tonight if you're not sure if you're registered to vote or if you need to register to vote.
So can I add something in, because I love it. And this is your show, but I don't want to take it up. But I did want to say this. I was reading the text, and I saw that Gina said that their 77-year-old mom is going to be voting for the very first time. I wish I had a bell to ring. Absolutely amazing. Gina Morris, there you go. Thank you so much. She's pestering you now. Well, shout out to you and your mom. Thank you both. And that shows again how important it is. I just had to break in and say that because I thought that was really powerful.
Well, I know we have more questions. Tori, do you have any questions on your end?
I see a good question here. So how do I mobilize folks to vote? So, I'm going to join Alphonso and really encouraging folks. If you don't have a plan yet, make a plan, make a detailed plan. What day are you going? What time of day? For many of us, we know early, I'm not an early bird, but we know voting early could be one of your best tools because you might end up being there a lot longer than you expected. How are you going to get there? We've got great stories about how we mobilize in our own communities, how a lot of us have volunteered our cars to take other people to the polls with us. People who live in our neighborhoods, perhaps people who don't. I see people on social media who are doing free rides, who are offering their services on election day and for early voting. Absolutely wonderful. You need to know what you're going to bring with you. Some states have different ID requirements, all of those things. I encourage folks to take more than one piece of ID if you feel that one is not going to be sufficient or if you feel that there could be problems. The most important thing to whoever wrote this question, I think is so very, very important. Have a plan, make it a detailed plan, share your plan with others, and then stick to your plan.
And I also want to add, okay, so full transparency, I'm a Gemini, honey. Like I'm an air sign through and through and through and through and through. So I have some good ideas, but I am not a planner and I will not be shamed for it. So if you are somebody who's like me and you are not a planner and you have to sometimes have your hand held through things, it's all good. Link up with folks who got a plan. Somebody in the huddle got a plan. So don't also feel the pressure or anxiety, because let's be real, this is a lot of anxiety. And especially for some of us who are just voting for the first time, or some of us who, you know, given everything with pandemic and people showing out and racial things, and I want to just take time and affirm that and affirm, you know, and acknowledge that anxiety. So let other people show up for you. Let them show up for you. So if you don't have a plan, take an opportunity and link up with other folks who do have the plan. And I just got a question, and I'm assuming that somebody maybe didn't catch when I talked about this, but I'll answer it again. So somebody was like, what if I'm told that I can't vote? So again, you can. It doesn't matter how you're dressed, what your name, your sex or gender identity, rather, pardon me, all of that. You're good. For whatever reason, though, if you're not able to use the ballot that you do have, you can request a provisional ballot. The only difference between with the provisional ballot is that they put you through some extra measures. So it takes a little bit more time sometimes to verify your identity, and your vote can be counted later toward the end. We want all the votes that we can get early, right away. And so, again, we do want to encourage you to vote early if you can. But if for whatever reason your ballot's damaged, you lost it, because I lose things, I misplace things right under my nose.
Basically saying this has happened before.
It has. It has. This happened in the midterm election. I had to go to a church because I was just like, that was a whole other story. But yeah, so like I had to like go and do that. So there isn't a scenario. Basically, the point that we're making here is there isn't a single scenario, except for certain states, if you're not allowed to vote because of like criminal stuff. But for the most part, there's no scenario in which you can't vote if you want to vote. So make sure you take advantage of that.
Right. And we have another question that just came in. There's been a lot of talk about mail-in balloting. What is the difference between a mail-in ballot and an absentee ballot? As a practical matter, there's very little difference between mail-in ballots and absentee ballots. Now, while some states differ in the terms they use to describe the concept, it's the same concept, which is voting by mail. The premise is the same. The many states offer voters the ability to choose the plan that they're going to vote and the method of voting. In the past, in some cases, absentee balloting, you had to request it. In some states, mail-in balloting, they get automatically sent to you. The rules and the deadlines differ. So we need to make sure that we're all informed about what those rules are, depending on where you live. But principally, how a voter requests the ballot and how they submit the ballot, that all differs state to state. So again, if you are going to be voting by mail, please go to hrc.org/vote and get the information that applies to your state. Because if you're speaking to your mother, cousin, friend, sister, brother in another state, and they're saying, well, I'm voting by mail and this is what I'm doing, do not assume that that applies to you. Check your home state to make sure you understand what the rules are.
Great. I'm actually seeing a question I'd love to answer, and it actually really goes really well with what you just said, Alphonso. And the question is, what should I do if I requested my ballot by mail but haven't received it? That's a great question, especially 14 days from an election and now 13 business days before an election. So at the election administrators and the U.S. Postal Service, they're expecting, as we all know, a huge uptick in the number of requests for mail ballots. So the post office has also already said that it could take up to 14 days for you to receive and return your request forms and ballots. So what that means is we now have 13 business days prior to the election. In some places, it may take longer to receive and then return your request form and your ballot than we actually have before the election. If for some reason you've already requested your ballot and you haven't received it yet, you can still vote at a polling precinct, at a polling location, if you just want to avoid crowds, or if you want to vote on election day. But be sure to talk to an election official. In some places, they may have cast your vote as provisional. I live in Atlanta. In Metro Atlanta, and if you have been mailed an absentee ballot, you have to turn it in. Ideally, you will turn it in if you change your mind and decide to vote in person, because you can't have two ballots out. So that could be something that may be just special in Georgia. It might be something that applies in your area. Most important thing, talk to an elected official. If you don't have that mail-in ballot, with you, then what I was told is I can ask for a registrar or whomever else, but have a plan, stick with it, ask for a registrar.
I guess I'll go ahead and choose one. Let's see here. Okay, somebody said, I'm a college student, I'm from one state and go to school in another, how do I vote? So basically voters can only have one registered primary residence. So if you are, it's really up to you. So if you're like on campus and you're at a dorm and you choose to be there, you could use your dorm address and vote in that state. If you are someone who goes home on a regular, like if you're like on a borderline state or somewhere where home is a hop, skip, and a jump away, then you can just leave it at home. I also want to acknowledge that, for those who aren't students, but for those who travel while they work, even like right now, my roommate's in Arizona on the ground doing some last minute engagement in a purple state, Arizona. And so, that happens. I also want to take time to see my sisters, brothers, and others who are sex workers. I know that some of the kids like travel and, you got to go where the money is. I get it. I've been there. So that being said, just make a plan to make sure that you're there to get that ballot. And to also give another piece of advice from what Tori said a moment ago, make sure you take advantage of ballot tracks, BALLOTTRAX.net, and you will be able to choose your state, and then it'll let you know where your ballot is. So you'll actually be able to find out where it's going to. So with that being said, it's okay if you're out of state. Just make sure that you only have one primary address that's listed, and that you have a plan to make sure that you can get that ballot and submit it in enough time to be counted.
And so if you're watching this and you're thinking, why is all of this so complicated? Why are the rules not consistent? It was meant to be that way, unfortunately. It's supposed to be confusing, right? And that's part of what we need to seize back. That's part of what we need to do, is to create a system that is easy for people to participate in. But unfortunately, we have the current system that is so complicated, so difficult, where there are barriers that are created so people actually don't participate in the process. So I know some of you are probably thinking about that. I was sort of communicating with someone non-verbally, and I heard that question come, so I just wanted to answer that. One question that did come in, though, is, and I think Ashlee answered this, but I'll cover this again, which is, what if the line is long or my polling location is set too close before I get to the front of the line?
It's a party, honey. That's what it is.
Bring your yoga mat, bring a blanket, bring drinks, stay in line. Stay in line. Do not leave. If you remember nothing from today, stay in line and do not leave. There are uncertainties like long lines, and those are factors in making sure, as you heard from Tori, you have to have a plan. But what happens if your plan doesn't work out? We've said vote early, vote by mail, but if you don't do those two things and you wait until November 3rd, stay in line even after the polls close. Because if you are in line, you should be able to vote. But again, if you vote early, if you vote by mail, you can potentially avoid that challenge. But if you can't do that for a variety of different reasons, and you're standing in a long line at 9 a.m. and you're still standing in at 6 p.m., please stay in line. Because once you're in line, you should have the ability to vote.
That's good tea. May I take the next question?
Sure.
I see a question that says, what if I'm homeless or previously incarcerated? We heard Marissa talk a little bit about the incarceration piece, and Ashlee kind of hit on homeless. And voters who are homeless have every right to vote. I want to make sure people understand that. Folks who are experiencing homelessness have every right to vote, period, Pooh. Folks, it's recommended. You can use the address of a shelter sometimes. In some places, you can use the address of a shelter, maybe a community-based organization, someplace that you probably know. You might even be able to use a street name or park address that you could use as well. Every state, all kinds of localities, some places differ in the kind of policies that they have. And in a lot of states, if you are a person who was previously incarcerated, many folks would be surprised to know that voting rights can be restored after a person's incarceration. And that's really, really important. Previously incarcerated individuals, you can learn out more by checking out your state selection centers. And that's really, really important. And it's not too late to find out. And in a lot of cases, it's not too late to register.
So we just had a question come in, and I'm actually very interested to get Ashlee's feedback as well as Tori. So the question is, why does my vote matter? I am one person. I'll start.
Yeah.
Why does your vote matter? Your vote matters because we elect people to represent us. And if your voice is not heard, that person is not going to represent your interests. At its core, our democracy is structured so that your voice is heard. And if you said, well, I live in a state where I don't think it's going to matter because the majority of people are going to vote progressive anyway. Do you care about police reform? Do you care about homelessness? Do you care about housing reform? When you vote for those things, you're voting at the local level. When you're voting for police reform, the mayor and the city council are deciding whether or not funds are going to certain channels. They make those decisions, not the President of the United States, not Congress. Your local elected officials are making decisions every single day. How often is your trash collected? Whether or not you can change your identification if you are transgender or gender nonconforming. Those are decisions that are made at the state level. So your vote matters, regardless of where you live. So that was my soapbox. I'm gonna get off.
Can't hear you.
My bad. I also want to point out that we saw in 2016 how close that was. That was like really like, and in some state level races even, I've seen it be decided by less than 3,000 votes. And so like that may not seem like a lot, but when you think about the millions upon millions upon millions of Americans who vote, that's huge. And so I think also just understanding that the objective is to suppress your vote. The objective is to make you feel like you're not worthy. The objective is to make you feel like that nothing will ever change. It's to make you feel as though it's bigger than you. Even when we talk about the esoteric nature of politics, which is why like I live for the folks who are out here breaking it down, for the folks who didn't go to an Ivy League university for political science, but just talking about how these issues impact us on a daily basis, these policies, legislation, all of that. So definitely I would just say that essentially your voice is, your vote is your voice. It's an opportunity to exercise that because people died for that. Folks got their tail whooped. People were killed. People were jailed. We know about the passing of John Lewis and his legacy and the civil rights era. And so it's not just something that was just like slid across the table to us. Like we had to fight for that. So if but anything, maybe allow that to be an opportunity to honor your ancestors, the opportunity to recognize that, again, there was work put in these streets for that. So have it, it's yours.
And just adding, did you all notice I'm wearing my flag-ish shirt sweater today? Did you all catch that? It's a, there's a theme. But it's really, so we can't reiterate this enough. And before we go on to the next one, I really want people to understand, because you said it, your vote is your voice is your vote. My voice is my vote. There will be some of us who will never get close enough to a president to share words and share space and share air. There will be some of us who may never get to talk to a governor personally. Never get in contact with the governor or share space with the governor. But you have the power of your vote determines who the sheriff is. It determines who your mayor is. Wow. All your local leaders are. You mentioned trash collection. It also determines, I like money. I'm a fan of money. It determines how much your millage rate is on your home. If you own a home, it determines property taxes, all kinds of other things, road conditions. For those of us who ride public transportation, your vote actually helps to determine in part what the cost of public transportation or gas is, all of those kinds of things. So your vote, that's one of the strongest tools that we have in a free and democratic society. It is a tool, it is a sledgehammer. And I encourage you, I implore you to make sure that you vote so that folks can hear what it is that you have to say.
Really quick, I seen a question that I've been eyeballing, and it's a good question, and I don't want to miss it. Somebody asked, "What advice could you do you have for people who don't get the day off to vote?" That's a really good question. So we know that in some states, they're not necessarily giving the day off, but they're giving a specific window of time that doesn't count against your lunch, something separate. And so if you go to workplacefairness.org, they're really good about outlining which states have specific, propositions that are actually on the ballot, or that they have voting laws that actually require them to give you time within your workday on election day to cast your vote. So really, it's going to be really interesting because there's going to be long lines and it's an unprecedented moment. And so we don't know what that looks like, but I would definitely take it to workplacefairness.org or your labor board, your state labor board, and ask them, because they'll have the most updated information on that, on what your rights are.
What was that website again? Because my boss happens to be on this call. And
wow.
Tuesday.
Won't he do?
We're providing time for people to vote. I mean, and many employers have done the same. So you should get that information, what Ashlee was referencing, because many employers have taken the position that people should have the right to vote. And there are also many organizations that are pushing for a national holiday. Why is it that we are working on the day that is really determining, who governs this country, who governs our states? So, but hopefully we'll be in the position to move forward on that type of initiative with a new administration. Okay, so one additional question here is, where do I go to get information on candidates in my state? Well, you can go to hrc.org/vote, and you can get information on all of the candidates that we have endorsed, the more than 650 candidates we have endorsed for this election, which is up by more than 35% from 2018. The majority of those are women, people of color. So you should certainly go to hrc.org. There are many other resources that you can go to. You can go to your local elections site. Every single state should have a board of elections. You can go to that site, and it should also have information about candidates that are running for office in your jurisdiction.
Somebody also asked, do I have to vote for everybody and everything on the ballot? No. If there's something that in fact, I personally made it, there's two parts to that. One, I'd rather just not fill that part out, because the worst thing I could do is vote for somebody that's actually harming a specific, piece of work that we're trying to pass, and not know it. You're not always going to know things. And so what we started doing on social media, especially during the midterm elections, is we started creating cheat sheets. So think about your favorite social justice organization, or, we know sometimes C3s can't always promote a specific candidate, which is why you don't always hear them talking about it. But for certain social justice movements that aren't attached to a C3, if you go to Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook, they'll have these cards that tell you how to vote on the various measures and propositions. And it actually breaks it down to tell you what it is. Because again, on the ballot, they'll try to play you. Sometimes they will message it in a weird, confusing way so that it's not clear. And so if in doubt, you can either leave it blank, or you can follow up to see what other mentors and, people who you work with, what they're saying, because there are some measures that I know nothing about. And I've had to be like, hey, Patrice or Future or who, let me know what's good. Like, what are y'all talking about out here?
So we have another question, which is, I cannot find my voter card. Can I vote? Yes. You don't need it. You don't need your voter card to vote. If you have your voter card, that's helpful. If you have your voter card, is another form of identification that you can use, but you don't need your voter card to vote. And why that most people don't know this, again, systems haven't been created that makes it easier for people to vote, which is why we want to get you this information. You do not need your voter card. If you have it, that's great. But if you don't have it, you should be able to vote as well.
So did you all remind the folks that when they go and vote in many locations, that there's I don't want to say the old ladies, Well, my mom's an old lady. So the old ladies have this printout of all of the names and folks who are registered in that particular area. And they literally go just like this, looking for your name. I think that's really cool because it's old school and it works, you know?
It does work.
It does work. It adds security in ways that many of us, security and comfort, because I told you I'm 50. I don't have any shame over that anymore.
You have to lie.
But it adds a really, that's a measure of security that I think many of us don't realize. I can't imagine how anyone could possibly tamper with that type of printout. So it's really funny, but it works.
So I know I'm sorry, Ashlee, go on.
It's fine. Just really quick, I know we're like wrapping up, but also please exercise safety to the best of your ability. This is still a pandemic, and I've been seeing some of y'all popping up on Instagram, but I'm not going to judge. Today, we're just going to keep it to voting. And we want to make sure that you are safe because we want you to still be here to reap the benefits of that vote. Okay, so that means that try to be mindful of things that you're touching. I'm the girl, you know, I was raised by my grandmother partially in Kentucky in addition to my mom, and we pack pens in our purses. Carry a pen if you can. For those, unless they require you to use a certain one, I don't want to get you in trouble, but think about, you know, wearing a mask. Think about gloves if you have them. If you have extras, please share them, because that's the other piece that when we talk about voter suppression, that's also part of it. Knowing that in the middle of a pandemic, it's a lot of people are going to be deterred from voting. And so it's great that you're doing that, but also health comes first. Safety is first. So make sure that you're taking those precautions too.
So we are coming to a close, but before we close out, I want to ask Tori, do you have any closing words for the folks who are watching?
VOTE on or before November the 3rd. That's it.
Ashlee, anything else from you?
Tori said it. That's it.
Folks, we're asking you to vote. Our community needs all of us to make sure that our votes are counted. Please enlist your friends. Please do everything that you can. We need to make sure we have massive numbers of people voting in this year's election. Our democracy is at stake. LGBTQ rights are at stake. The rights of women are at stake. The rights of marginalized communities, the rights of immigrants are at stake. Please make sure that you are exercising your constitutional right to vote. Doesn't exist everywhere. There's some parts of this country, the world, where the constitutional right doesn't exist to vote. We have it. So I hope that all of you will exercise this right that we do have. And with that, I want to welcome back Marissa Miller, who is going to close us out and introduce our closing video.
So listen, they have said everything that needs to be said. VOTE. That means vote. And listen, from a first-time voter, it was extremely liberating to be one of the ones that was counted this year. So a special thanks to HRC Alphonso and the wonderful team at HRC, Tori, Jay Brown, all the people that you never see in the background who make these wonderful partnerships work. To my dear sister from another mother, Ashlee Marie, for always rocking it, for always hanging in there, and for your tumultuous information on voting. It's a lot of times that Black trans women don't have the information. We have to get it from somewhere else. It's so important when we have the information and we can deliver it. Listen, everybody, this year was a challenging year, but we made it. From COVID-19 to the protests in the streets all across country, we made it. So on November 3rd, make sure, or before November 3rd, make sure that you go out and you vote. So listen, we want to share a little bit of what happened this year with a wonderful video from our marketing team, just to say thank you and to show you how we appreciate you and how the National Trans Visibility March took place 2020 virtually. Thank you so much for all of your support.